I 22M, need to share something that happened 10 years ago, when I was 12. It's a story about how my parents' decision to adopt changed my life forever, and how I finally got my revenge. It started when my parents, dad's an engineer at a tech company, mom's a successful real estate agent, called me into the living room for what they called an important family discussion. The TV was muted, and they had that serious look that usually meant either someone died or I was in trouble. Turns out, it was neither. "We've been thinking about this for a while," my dad, 45M, started, clearing his throat. "You're going to have a younger brother." Mom, 42F, jumped in, practically beaming, "We're adopting a boy named Ethan. He's 11, just a year younger than you, and he'll be joining our family next month." I remember sitting in my room that night, working on my computer program. I'd been teaching myself coding from YouTube tutorials, wondering what this would mean for our family. Mom kept coming in, asking if I'd help decorate the guest room for Ethan, talking about how we needed to make him feel welcome because he's had such a difficult life. Looking back now, I can clearly see how everything changed after Ethan arrived. He was this thin kid with curly brown hair and these big brown eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the world. At first, he barely spoke, tiptoeing around our house like he was walking on eggshells. My parents treated him like he was made of glass, speaking in soft voices and constantly asking if he needed anything. The first red flag appeared during dinner on his third night with us. I was telling my parents about getting an A+ on my science project, a simple robot I'd built that could follow light sources. Usually, they'd at least pretend to be interested. But mid-sentence, Ethan dropped his fork, and suddenly all attention shifted to him. "Are you okay, sweetie?" Mom rushed to his side. He gave this perfect little trembling smile and said, "I'm just not used to having such nice food." My parents practically melted. That's when I first saw it, the tiny smirk he gave me when they weren't looking. It was quick, but unmistakable. I can still see that smirk in my nightmares sometimes. Within weeks, Ethan had perfected his routine. He knew exactly how to play my parents like a violin. Every time I achieved something, he'd somehow turn it into a story about his difficult past. "Found my robot project broken in my room?" I was just trying to understand how it worked," he'd sniffle. "In my old home, I never got to have cool things like that." My parents' response? "Be more understanding, Michael. Ethan's trying to connect with you through your interests." Christmas that first year really opened my eyes to what my future would look like. For months, I'd been asking for a robotics kit, nothing fancy, just a basic Lego Mindstorms set. I'd shown my parents how it could help me learn programming and engineering, even created a whole presentation about its educational benefits. Christmas morning came, and I got some generic clothes and a $20 science book from the clearance section. But Ethan? He got a $500 gaming console with 5 games. Their explanation? Ethan's never had a proper Christmas before. The pattern continued into every aspect of our lives. When I got selected for the advanced math program, my parents barely glanced at the acceptance letter. But when Ethan managed to get a C+ in regular math, they took him out for ice cream to celebrate his progress. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. Ethan would struggle just enough to gain sympathy, then show minimal improvement to get lavish praise. I started spending more time in my room, diving deeper into programming and robotics. The internet became my real family. YouTube tutorials, coding forums, and online programming communities taught me what my parents were too busy to notice. While they attended every single one of Ethan's mediocre baseball games, I was teaching myself Python, then Java, creating small programs and games. Not that anyone at home cared enough to ask what I was doing up there. My 13th birthday was another eye-opener. I'd been planning a small party with my robotics club friends, nothing extravagant, just pizza and maybe some programming challenges we could solve together. 2 days before, Mom came to my room with that apologetic look I'd come to hate. "Honey, we think we need to keep things low-key this year. Ethan's still adjusting, and a party might be too overwhelming for him." Instead of a party, we had a quiet family dinner where Ethan managed to make even my birthday about him by getting mysteriously teary-eyed over the cake. "It just reminds me of all the birthdays I missed," he whispered, and of course, my parents spent the rest of my birthday consoling him. I caught that familiar smirk when they weren't looking. He was getting better at hiding it, but I still saw it. That summer was when I started documenting everything. I created a password-protected folder on my computer, logging every incident, every manipulation, every time my parents chose him over me. Call it the coder in me, but I needed to see the pattern laid out in data. And the pattern was crystal clear. In every situation, Ethan would create a crisis, my parents would rush to his aid, and I would become either the villain or simply invisible. Take the incident with my science fair project in 8th grade. I'd spent months developing a simple AI program that could recognize and sort basic shapes. The night before the fair, I found my laptop's screen cracked. Ethan's explanation? He'd tripped while walking past my desk. My parents' response? Accidents happen, Michael. Besides, you spend too much time on that computer anyway. What they didn't know was that I'd already backed up everything to a cloud server. I stayed up all night setting up the project on my old tablet, and ended up winning first place. Not that my parents saw it, they were at Ethan's baseball practice. When I brought home the trophy, Mom gave a distracted, "That's nice, honey," while helping Ethan with his homework. He didn't even need help, I'd seen him playing video games in his room all afternoon. As the years went by, the favoritism became more blatant. Every holiday, every special occasion, somehow turned into the "make Ethan feel special" show. Christmas? He needed extra presents to make up for his past. Thanksgiving? We had to have his favorite foods because traditional dishes might trigger bad memories. My achievements? They barely registered. I remember one particular incident that still makes my blood boil. I was 15, and my robotics team had made it to the state championships. The competition was on a Saturday, and for once, I actually asked my parents to come. "We'll try our best," Mom said, but I already knew what that meant. Sure enough, that Saturday morning, I overheard them in the kitchen. "Ethan's got a regular season baseball game, we can't miss that. Michael will understand." I did understand. I understood perfectly. We won the state championship. The local newspaper even ran a story about our team's innovative design. My robotics teacher, Mr. Anderson, was the only one who seemed genuinely proud. He pulled me aside after the ceremony and said, "You've got a real gift, Michael. MIT would be lucky to have someone like you." That was the first time anyone had mentioned MIT to me, and it planted a seed in my mind. Meanwhile, at home, life had settled into a predictable routine. Ethan would create some minor drama, my parents would swoop in to save him, and I would retreat to my room to work on my projects. I started taking advanced programming courses online, learning everything I could about software engineering and robotics. My room became my sanctuary, my computer my escape. By the time I was 16, I had already mapped out my entire future. I knew I wanted to go to MIT, knew exactly what I needed to do to get there. I started looking into scholarships, working on building my portfolio, and even took a part-time job at a local computer repair shop. Not that my parents noticed, they were too busy dealing with Ethan's latest crisis, which usually involved him failing some class or getting into minor trouble at school. The real kicker? Ethan was smart. I'd seen him ace tests when he thought no one was watching. But he'd deliberately tank his grades, then make a miraculous recovery to a C+ or B-, just enough to get praise and rewards from our parents. It was like watching a master manipulator at work. One day, I overheard a conversation between Ethan and his friend on the phone. "Dude, it's so easy," he was laughing. "I just have to look sad about my difficult past, and they buy me whatever I want." Meanwhile, their real son is like a ghost in his room. That conversation was stored in my documentation folder along with everything else. Not that I'd ever use it, my parents would probably find a way to make that my fault too. The college application process really highlighted just how deep the disparity had become. When I told my parents I was applying to MIT, their response was lukewarm at best. "That's very expensive, Michael," Dad said, not looking up from his phone where he was probably texting Ethan about his baseball game. "Maybe consider State University instead?" The same week, they spent hours helping Ethan research baseball scholarships for community colleges, despite his mediocre performance on the field. They even hired a private coach to help him improve his game. When I pointed out that the coach's fees could have gone toward my MIT application, Mom actually said, "But Ethan needs this for his self-esteem." I applied anyway, using my own money from my repair shop job. Mr. Anderson helped me with the application, wrote a glowing recommendation letter, and even helped me apply for scholarships. "Your parents should be proud," he said one day. I just nodded, not wanting to explain that they probably wouldn't even notice if I got in. By my junior year, I had built up quite a reputation in the local programming community. I'd developed several apps for local businesses, created custom software solutions, and even won a national coding competition. The prize was a new laptop, which mysteriously disappeared from my room a week later. Ethan claimed he'd seen someone sneaking around the house, but the security camera footage I'd secretly installed, and backed up to the cloud, showed him walking out with it himself. When I confronted him about the laptop, he put on his usual show for our parents. "I was just borrowing it to try and learn programming like Michael," he said, tears welling up perfectly on cue. I thought, maybe if I could be more like him. He didn't even finish the sentence before Mom was hugging him, and Dad was lecturing me about being more understanding. That was the moment I knew I had to get out. Not just out of the house, but out of their lives completely. I threw myself into my work at the computer repair shop, taking every extra shift I could get. I started a secret bank account, separate from the one my parents knew about. Every dollar I earned went into planning my escape. I also began quietly gathering all my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, everything I'd need to start a new life. I stored them in a secure location at work, along with backups of all my programming projects and that extensive documentation of Ethan's manipulation. Not that I planned to use it, at that point, I just wanted to be free. The school counselor helped me apply for every scholarship available. She noticed something was wrong at home but didn't push when I deflected her questions. Instead, she focused on helping me plan my future. "Your grades and achievements speak for themselves," she said. "Don't let anyone dim your light." I was accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship. When I showed my parents the acceptance letter, they barely looked at it. They were too busy planning Ethan's birthday celebration. He'd managed to get his grades up to a B- average, and they wanted to reward him with a car. I'm writing this from my dorm room now, surrounded by computer parts and robotics projects. Getting here wasn't easy, and this is just the beginning of my story. A lot has happened since I left home, and it gets even more interesting. But right now, I need to focus on my studies. I'll update this post when I can, but something tells me this story isn't over yet. Update 1: 2 years have passed since my last post, and a lot has changed. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my original post. I read every comment, and they helped me realize I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. I'm now in my junior year at MIT, maintaining a perfect GPA while working part-time as a research assistant in the robotics lab. Between my scholarship, research stipend, and summer internships at tech companies, I've managed to become completely financially independent. It's ironic, all those years of being forced to be self-reliant actually prepared me for success. Last week, I received an unexpected email from my mother. Remember that car they were planning to buy Ethan for his B average? Well, they did more than that. They bought him a brand new sports car for getting through his first semester at community college with a C+ average. Not a reliable used car, no, they went all out and financed a $45,000 vehicle they couldn't afford. "He needs this for his self-confidence," was their justification, according to my old neighbor who still keeps me updated. Mom's email wasn't to congratulate me on making the dean's list or to ask about my latest robotics project, which just won a major competition. No, it was to subtly hint about their financial struggles. The car payments are eating into their savings, and Ethan's community college tuition is surprisingly expensive. She didn't directly ask for money, but the implication was clear. What makes this even more absurd is that while they're drowning in car payments for Ethan, I just received a pre-graduation job offer from one of the top tech companies in Silicon Valley. The salary they're offering is more than both my parents make combined. Not that I told them about it, they haven't earned the right to share in my success. Life at MIT has been transformative. For the first time, I'm surrounded by people who actually understand and value what I do. My robotics professor became something of a mentor to me, offering guidance not just in academics but in life. When I shared some of my family history with him, he said something that really stuck with me: sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the family we're born into. Last month, my team won a major robotics competition, developing an AI-driven assistance robot for elderly care. The project was featured in several tech magazines, and we're even in talks with investors about potential commercialization. My team celebrated with a dinner that felt more like a real family gathering than any holiday I ever spent at home. I've also started dating someone from my advanced programming class. She comes from a loving, supportive family, and seeing how they interact has made me realize just how dysfunctional my own family situation was. Her parents have shown more interest in my projects in 6 months than mine did in 18 years. Meanwhile, according to my old neighbor, Ethan's manipulative behavior has reached new heights. He's barely attending his community college classes, but somehow convinced our parents that he needs private tutoring, which they're paying for by dipping into their retirement savings. The car they bought him? He's already had 2 fender benders, and their insurance premiums have skyrocketed. My mother's emails have become more frequent, each one hinting more desperately at their financial troubles. The last one mentioned how they might have to refinance the house to cover unexpected expenses. Read Ethan's latest demands. She always ends with subtle guilt trips about how family should support each other. What they don't know is that I've been documenting everything since day one. Every manipulative incident, every financial decision, every time they chose him over me, it's all meticulously recorded. I'm not planning to use this information yet, but something tells me it might come in handy someday. I've also discovered something interesting through my tech network. Apparently, Ethan has been bragging on social media about how he's running the perfect scam with our parents. He even posted about intentionally failing tests just so they'd hire tutors, calling them gullible and easy marks. I've saved screenshots of everything. The most recent development? Ethan's talking about dropping out of community college to pursue his dreams of becoming a professional gamer. He's already convinced our parents to buy him an expensive gaming setup, claiming it's for studying online. The irony of them financing his gaming equipment while they told me MIT was too expensive isn't lost on me. I'll update again when there's more to share. Right now, I need to focus on finalizing my thesis project and preparing for my upcoming internship. Something tells me this story isn't over yet. In fact, I think we're just getting to the interesting part. Update 2: the situation with my family has finally reached its breaking point. For those who've been following my story, you might remember how my parents were struggling with Ethan's car payments and other expenses. Well, things have gotten much worse, and it all came to a head on my 20th birthday. I wasn't planning to see my family, but they reached out saying they had something important to discuss. After the success of my latest AI project and securing a position at a prominent tech company, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had finally recognized my achievements. I agreed to meet them at our old local diner. When I arrived, I immediately noticed something was off. Mom looked anxious, Dad couldn't meet my eyes, and Ethan, well, Ethan had that same smug look I remembered from childhood. They didn't even start with, "Happy birthday." Instead, Mom launched straight into their situation. Turns out, they're drowning in debt from Ethan's various expenses. The car they bought him? He totaled it while racing with his friends, uninsured. The gaming setup they purchased for his online studies? He dropped out of community college anyway and is now demanding better equipment to become a professional streamer. But here's the real kicker: they didn't invite me to discuss my birthday or my achievements. They wanted money. Specifically, they wanted me to loan them $50,000 to cover Ethan's debts and buy him a new car. Their justification? He needs reliable transportation for his future career opportunities. When I asked about these opportunities, Ethan smirked and said he had big plans for his streaming career. He hadn't even started streaming yet, but apparently needed top-of-the-line equipment to compete with the pros. The whole time, he kept giving me that same calculating look I remembered from childhood, the one he always had before manipulating our parents. The conversation got worse when Mom mentioned they'd already looked into my salary at my new tech job. They'd somehow found out about my compensation package and had already made plans for my money. Family helps family, Dad said, not meeting my eyes. And Ethan really needs our support right now. That's when something inside me finally snapped. All those years of documentation, all those incidents I'd recorded, all the manipulations I'd witnessed, everything crystallized in that moment. I looked at them, really looked at them, and saw them clearly for the first time. Support? I said quietly. Like the support you gave me when I got into MIT? Or when I won the state robotics championship? Or maybe like the support you showed when I made Dean's List every semester while working part-time? Mom tried to interrupt with her usual, but Ethan's situation is different speech, but I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone and showed them screenshots of Ethan's social media posts, the ones where he bragged about manipulating them, calling them easy marks, and laughing about his perfect scam. The color drained from their faces as they read. But Ethan, ever the performer, immediately started his routine. I was just trying to cope with my trauma, he sniffled, eyes welling up on cue. You don't understand how hard it's been. For the first time, my parents seemed unsure which script to follow. But old habits die hard. Mom started to reach for him, already forming the words of comfort she'd practiced for so many years. No, I said, standing up. I'm done. You didn't invite me here for my birthday. You didn't invite me here because you care about my achievements or my life. You invited me here because your golden child needs more money, and you thought you could manipulate me just like he manipulates you. The diner suddenly felt very quiet. Other customers were pretending not to watch our family drama unfold, but I didn't care anymore. Years of pent-up feelings were finally coming out. You know what's ironic? I continued, my voice steady. I could actually help you. My new job pays well enough that I could cover all your debts. But you didn't even ask how I'm doing, didn't even say happy birthday. It was straight to what Ethan needs. Then Ethan made his final play, the one that sealed his fate. He started telling a story about how he'd been researching programming, trying to follow in my footsteps, but needed better equipment. His eyes were wide and innocent, the performance perfect as always. My parents were already softening, ready to take his side again. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. I have a meeting with my investment advisor tomorrow, I said. I'll think about how I might be able to help. But I need time to arrange things. That was the last time I saw them in person. I walked out of that diner knowing exactly what I was going to do. 10 years of documentation, screenshots, and careful observation were finally going to serve a purpose. I'll update one final time when everything is finished. For now, let's just say that karma has a way of catching up with people, and I've learned a thing or two about programming financial systems over the years. Update 3. First, I want to thank everyone in this community who's followed my story and offered support over the years. Your comments and messages helped me realize I wasn't alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics. Now, for the conclusion you've all been waiting for. Remember how I mentioned having a meeting with my investment advisor? Well, what I actually had was a meeting with someone I met during my time at MIT, someone who had extensive knowledge about creating highly convincing replicas of certain financial instruments. The plan was simple. When my parents reached out again, which they did, predictably, within a week, I told them I'd help them with their financial troubles. I sent them a package containing what looked like a substantial amount of cash. As expected, they immediately handed it all to Ethan. And Ethan, being exactly who I knew he was, did exactly what I predicted. He took the money straight to a casino, probably thinking he could multiply his windfall. The casino's counterfeit detection systems worked exactly as they should. I hear the look on his face when security detained him was priceless. My parents were spared any legal consequences, they genuinely didn't know about the fake money. But Ethan? Let's just say that attempting to pass counterfeit currency at a casino gets you more than a slap on the wrist. He's currently enjoying an extended stay at a federal facility, where I'm sure he's perfecting his "poor me" routine for his fellow inmates. The best part? Mom and Dad are finally facing the reality of who their precious adopted son really is. The casino's investigation uncovered all of Ethan's social media posts about scamming them, his history of manipulation, everything. They tried to reach out to me again, but I've blocked their numbers. My neighbor tells me they're devastated, but honestly, I feel nothing. I'm writing this from a luxury spa resort, where I'm celebrating with my girlfriend. She's been incredibly supportive throughout this whole process, and her family has shown me what real family love looks like. We're planning to get engaged soon. My career is thriving. I just got promoted to lead engineer on an innovative AI project. The irony isn't lost on me that all those hours I spend alone in my room, learning to code while my parents fawned over Ethan, led to my success. Sometimes the very things that hurt us end up making us stronger. To those who might judge my actions as too harsh, you didn't live through years of systematic emotional abuse and manipulation. You didn't watch your parents drain their retirement savings for a manipulative liar while telling you your dreams were too expensive. Sometimes, karma needs a little push in the right direction. Lastly, I want to express my deepest gratitude to this Reddit community. When I first posted here years ago, I was a confused and hurt teenager who didn't understand why his parents couldn't love him equally. Your comments helped me see that I wasn't crazy, that my feelings were valid, and that I had the right to stand up for myself. To everyone who shared similar stories in the comments, who sent supportive DMs, who offered advice and encouragement, you helped me more than you'll ever know. You were the family I needed when my own family failed me. Today, I'm successful, happy, and finally free from toxic family dynamics. Ethan's in jail, my parents are facing the consequences of their choices, and I'm enjoying a spa weekend with someone who genuinely loves me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about getting even, it's about living well and letting karma do its thing. Thank you, Reddit. This will be my final update. It's time to close this chapter and focus on building a future with people who actually deserve to be in my life.